Welcome back to another episode of the Be the CEO of Your Life and Business podcast. So, as Amy and I are approaching 100 episodes, can you believe it?
I'm so excited.
I can't believe that we've done almost 100 episodes. What is this, 98?
Yeah.
This is episode 98. We were going back and forth about what our 100th episode should be about. So we went back and we looked at all of the different topics we've done. And one of the most popular, one of the most listened to episodes had to do with creating boundaries. And in that episode, we talked about how we don't believe that there's such thing as work life and personal life. That's just life. So since that was one of our most listened to episodes, and it was almost a year ago, that episode.
Yep.
We figured we would come back and, maybe give a new spin on it or go into more detail on the topic, because it's something that is so relevant for us always.
Mm-hmm.
And quote unquote balance, we don't believe there is such thing as balance, but it's just an issue that so many people struggle with because we are so busy with work, building our firm. And now we have 2 employees, that we are supervising.
Yeah.
And, so it's just been a lot. As we've talked over the last couple of weeks. I'm now into the spring sports season. So there's just a lot of things going on. I am very, very grateful for where I am in business. And, Mike and I were having a conversation last night. This is a total side note. And I forget what we were talking about. And we were talking about, would I ever want to be a judge? We went into that whole topic. And I said, I love my practice. I literally love my practice. Like, I love running my own business. I love what we're doing.
Yeah.
And, so, in that conversation, I just said, I'm so thankful for where we are and what we're building, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't come with struggles.
Oh my gosh, it's
Right?
challenging
Do you
us
agree
every
with
day.
that?
Oh yeah, I agree with it wholeheartedly. We are challenged every single day with something new, and it's a different kind of challenge.
It's totally
you really,
different.
I hate to say this, but this is almost like what the advice was when I was pregnant with my first daughter, and everybody's like, you don't get it until you become a mother. You don't get it until you become a parent, like those kinds of things. You don't get it unless you are in it.
Right.
Like, this is not just, I just come to the office with my briefcase every day and I do my work and then I go, like, that's not what this is.
Right.
There's so much. And quite frankly, if it was that, we wouldn't have to deal with boundaries, because we would have those imposed boundaries of like starting time and ending time. That's totally not what business ownership looks like.
No, not at all. We were just having a conversation about the text messages that we get.
Oh.
And I was saying, with the system that we use, I wish that there was some kind of away message that I could put on the text messaging system that we have, because I get text messages, and this is not on my cell phone. We can text from our work phone number.
Yep.
I get text messages 24/7.
Yeah.
And I just wish, like, even when I'm in a closing, if I could put an out of office, like, away message on my text messages, that would be phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to draw boundaries. Like, there's no such thing as balance. You can't balance your work life and your personal life. I personally don't believe in that, but you can draw boundaries to try to make it more manageable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because, and just to go back to what Laura just said, you can't create a perfect balance. And because balance implies that there's some sort of like an equal footing for the 2 things, right? Like, work is balanced with your life. If you try to achieve that, the balance terminology, I think, will just throw people for a loop, because they're like, ooh, but I'm not giving enough time to this. So that means that I'm not in alignment. It just is a really poor measure, I think.
I agree with you.
And we're kind of like trained, like, oh, you should have this balance between work, and work isn't everything, and family is most important, and all. And I'm not saying that because I don't believe that that's true. I believe that family is very important. I believe that your life outside of the hat that you wear for your career is very important. It makes you part of you. But when you're trying to delineate when does one thing stop and one thing start, sometimes that can get really blurry. And if you get so fixated on like creating those really rigid fences or, boundaries, they can really trip you up and make you feel like you're just running in circles and never getting to this level of perfect balance.
I struggled for so many years with that
Mhm.
because everybody always talked about work-life balance, work-life balance. And when my kids were young, I would say, what does that even mean? Like, there's no,
Yeah.
that's not achievable. So it's like I was chasing something that's an impossibility because you cannot balance work and home. It's just, and I always say this, I first heard it from Grant Cardone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just life.
Yeah.
Our business is part of my life, a very big part of my life, but obviously our kids are part of our lives, our husbands, our families.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these different things that come into play. But when, and I, it's so sad for working moms who, and by the way, did you say this on the last episode?
I
Why
did.
on your episode?
I
Why are there
did.
working moms but not working dads? That's a whole other topic. Anyway,
It's all ingrained
it's
in our brains, folks. We're here to break the molds.
it is. And it's when I see a young mom, I just like feel the stress because when I was there, I was in that mindset of I have to find this balance, I have to achieve this work-life balance. And it's an impossibility. So
Yeah.
don't put pressure on yourself to achieve the unachievable because you can't. You just can't. Like, you're one person, you can only do so many things. I always say at home, I said this last night, I wish I could clone myself, because if I could clone myself, I would get a lot more done on a daily basis. I would have help doing the dishes, help doing the laundry, all the things I'm on my feet doing. And so we work all day, we come home, we're on our feet until we go to bed because we're doing everything else in the house with the kids.
Yeah.
And there's literally not a moment on some days of rest, which is the kind of day I had yesterday. And if I were still trying to achieve some kind of balance, I'd be miserable, literally miserable.
Yeah.
Because it puts so much more stress on you than is necessary. And then you already have so much stress.
Right. And for me right now, the season that I'm going through is feeling like I am a ship passing the rest of my family in the night, because I was elected to my local board of education, and these past 3 months have just like unequivocally been more busy than I think prior months have been for them. We've had a lot more coming up. We've had special meetings. We've had all these different things. And I'm also responsible to act as the liaison for the countywide school board association. So this week alone, my husband and I, it's so funny. We're like, okay, so let's talk about the week coming up and let's talk about what we have at night. And this week in particular, my husband was out of the house Monday and Tuesday night because of his volunteer commitments. And then I'm out of the house Wednesday and Thursday night because of my board of education commitments. And if now, as I'm looking at that, I'm like, oh, that's balanced. Like, my husband's out 2 nights and I'm out 2 nights. But really, it's like, it's so difficult to put into words how tough of a pill that is to swallow, because I'm taking away from that time that I'm spending with my family. But at the same time, my kids are gaining so much alone time with my husband.
Right.
Like, there's a give and a take, and all of this is a matter of perspective, because what I want them to be able to see is ultimately seeing me working really hard, serving my community. And these are values that will come and result of it, even though this period of time is so stressful, like this season is so stressful. So I've kind of just like given in to the schedule that I have, because I know it's really crazy.
You have to, like, you can't change it.
No.
So, and I was just having this conversation with Matthew this morning, my son, because we were talking about, something he was upset about, and the way somebody feels. And I said, you can't, just let it go. Like, you cannot control, there are most things you cannot control. You just have to give in and let it go. And so for our purposes in this discussion, you're so right. Like, you just have to give into it. Like, you have these commitments. Joey has these commitments. You're both dedicated to serving your community in different capacities. You're building your business. He's a fire instructor. Like, he's doing all these different things.
Yeah.
And you have 2 kids.
Yeah.
So
you
have all, for me, it's all the sports, it's building the business. And there have been, let's not get it twisted. There have been many days where I am just unhappy because I'm tired. Like, why do we have all these commitments? We're running around like crazy.
Yeah.
So it's not that Amy and I are all happy-go-lucky every day. It's like, oh, this is great. We have all these commitments. Let's just keep going. There are days where we just feel like we're drowning, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
You're going to have those days. We're not saying that every day should be like, oh, this is great. Okay, we're not stressed.
No, and it's actually a really good point though, too, because there's two paths that you can choose. You can choose the path of saying, this really sucks and I'm exhausted and why me and why is this all happening and why is it so stressful? Or you can choose the alternate path, which is like, all right, let's just make the best of what the situation is right now. And I can almost guarantee that if you take that lighter path, you are going to find yourself more present and more focused and enjoying the ride. I mean, this week alone, the work days have been, if you look at our Outlook calendar that we use as a firm, it is the most colorful rainbow you have ever seen. Almost every inch of it is blocked off with somebody somewhere, either taking calls, going to closings, going to court appearances, settlement conferences. I had 2 mediations alone this week.
Yeah.
It's been crazy this week. And my days have had to be so super laser focused, but it's been one of the most enjoyable weeks for me because I feel so productive.
Yeah.
I feel so focused. I feel like my days are going in the rhythm that they are. Although I wish I could add 7 more hours to every single day, because there are days I left here and I said to Laura the other day, I left here and I knew I had to leave. I knew I had to go home. But I left here saying, I have so much to do and I just can't figure out how to fit it all in. And what I then process is, okay, well then how can I fit it in tomorrow? How can I fit it in the next day? Is there a way that I'm just misprioritizing certain things? Like, am I making the overwhelm just because I'm so eager to get the work done? Or am I overwhelmed because I'm doing something wrong, right? Like, that's a distinct difference. Like, I'm just excited to get this work and be doing this work. And it's not so much of like, I am messing up or I'm like stressed or anxious because of it.
I think too, it's also for us an issue of, even still for me, I have been on my own for more than 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so Amy and I have talked a lot about how our, roles were just very different at the last firm we were at.
Yes.
And, putting it mildly.
Yeah.
And I still struggle with that because what did we literally just say before we got on? This is just our role now. Like, we have to deal with the administrative stuff, the business. There's the practice of law and there's the business of law. And we are running a business in addition to practicing law.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing both, it becomes this. So I'm not having the productive week that you're having. I have been so stressed out this week because I've been having trouble getting everything done. I have a lot of different, and I'm so, I got to knock on wood. I'm so thankful for the clients, the people who send us business. Like, we're so blessed with everything we have. We also have to get it done and we have to do it well.
Yeah.
So if that means I have to delegate something, then I have to delegate it. But it's a matter of sitting down and actually processing, like, not yesterday morning, but 2 mornings ago, I think it was, I sat down and I made a list of all my litigation cases, where we are, what has to be done. There are so many things that I have to do. And so now I have to figure out what I can have somebody else help me with, because it's just, it has to happen. I'm not in that role anymore of the workhorse.
Yes. Very valid point. So we talked about this topic a year ago, and with the utmost confidence, this topic has changed for us so dramatically and profoundly in 1 year's time.
Yep.
Because of the changes in very good ways that our business is feeling, that we are employing more people, we are delegating more, we are, really trying to figure out the best way to make the firm work and service all of the clients as best as we can. It's a really great problem to have.
Yes.
But it is a process that Laura and I are doing, and it's happening and unfolding in front of everybody's eyes, is that we are now learning how to be the business owners and operators of a very busy law firm. And when you are going from that position where you had a job, you worked your job, and you could very easily say, well, okay, those motion papers can wait until tomorrow. I got to finish them up, or I know I have court, blah, 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 blah. And that was the extent of it. And then, and making sure that you were preserving those client relationships and building on them. That is so different than when you are doing this on your own. And if somebody's going to tell you otherwise, don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. It is definitely more stressful. It's a different kind of stress. It's exciting, and there's a lot of moving parts that you have to kind of take into account, but this is an evolving topic. And that's the underscore of almost all of our topics here, is that you will feel changes. Like, you have to go through different periods. You're going to have different seasons of growth. You're going to have, ups and downs and undulations all over the place. And you just have to go along for the ride, because they're preparing for you for the next thing.
Yeah. And so it's so funny that we're talking about this. When you did your own episode last week, because I was away.
Yep.
And I said, when I came back, I feel like I worked the entire time that I was away. We took Matthew away for his birthday. We went to Florida. It was such a great time. We went fishing. We went to the Yankee spring training game, and I worked the entire time. We came back to the hotel room at night, 10 o'clock at night. I was dealing with a real estate contract issue, and I had to do it. Like, there was nobody else to do it for me. I had to get it done.
Right.
But it was different because I was doing it for my own business.
Mm-hmm.
So Amy knows I am a workaholic. I'm trying to be a recovering workaholic, but I've always been a workaholic. I love working. And like, Mike was laughing at me last night. I was like, I love my practice. Like, I love what we do. And he's like rolling his eyes at me. But it's just true. I like working. I'm not normal. I know I'm a weirdo, but it was different because, and I don't think he cared as much, because in the old days, I was still kind of that way, but for building somebody else's business. And he would be like, what are you doing? Like, you're on vacation. This is not your firm. Let somebody else handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be doing everything I had to do because that was just me. And he hated it. But now it just feels different.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing it for our own business.
Yeah.
So it was terrible to have to work.
But let me ask you this. Staying with the Mike and you topic, you've had discussions with Mike since you've opened your own practice, before the pandemic even started. And he understands that, because he's obviously like a reasonable, rational person. And he gets like, okay, my wife is building a business.
Right.
Like, I have to give her that space. I have to allow her the time to do that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing for me, because I would feel more guilty. And my husband, when I was still working from home primarily, during the pandemic and even into last year, he's like, do you need to go back down to the basement and get some work done? Like, cause that's where our home office is. He's like, go downstairs. It's okay. And I'm like, no, I'm supposed to be up here. I have to help you with the kids. And he's like, no. And even to this day, hey, I'm getting the kids today after school. Like, you got to stay till whatever, 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:15, whatever it is. And I'm like, what? Like, who are you? He just totally gets it.
And that's where it comes back to the idea of balance. Like, it's never going to be 50% with the family, 50% with your business. It's just not. Like, when I was away, it was probably 60% of me dealing with work issues, 40% of me.
If you had to quantify
if I had to quantify it.
Right.
And it just is what it is. My kids are used to it. They know. And I try as much as I can to be there to get them off the bus, to be home. But like today, we have a virtual settlement conference on Zoom at 2 p.m. And I said to Mike this morning, I was like, I'm really sorry. Amy and I have this conference. I'm not going to be home. And he's like, yeah, whatever. Like, he just, he knows that some days I'm going to be there and some days I can't.
Right.
And so it's more like, you can't call it balance. I call it more of like a juggling act.
Yes, it's true. It's boundaries. It's setting up, like, going back to what the boundaries are that you create, and what you can create is you can create boundaries with people, like an automated response, like you putting something up on your email out of office, which if you're not utilizing it, you are underutilizing that technique and that option to the nth degree.
When
you
I
need
have
to
a
get
closing,
on it. Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before, but there was an attorney that Amy and I highly respect.
And he is an old school
Yeah.
attorney. Like he's the last person that I'm thinking he's gonna know how to put an out of office on.
Couple of years ago, I got an out of office from him that said something like, I'm in court this afternoon. I'll be back tomorrow. Like, I'll check my emails later, something like that. And I went into Amy's office. I'm like, Amy, look at this out of office message that he sent. And from that point on, I mean, we didn't do it as much when we were at the old firm, but now when I'm in a closing, out of office messages on my email, I'm just like, call my paralegal. If it's not urgent, I'll get back to you later. So you have to try and draw those boundaries. If I could do that with my text messages, I 100% would. But there are circumstances, like when I was on vacation, that you have to deal with. Like there's nobody else that can do it. It's time sensitive, it's urgent, and you have to do it. And that's where it's juggling.
In boundaries, another way of saying boundaries is communication tool. A boundary is really just a communication between you and another person, setting realistic expectations. So for Laura, when she puts an out of office up and she says she's in court or she's in a conference or whatever it is, that's a communication to everybody else, giving them an expectation. This is where I am. I have no access to my emails. I'll talk to you later. Like that's what that is. When we were practicing previously, and even, in our very small community of lawyers in the county that we operate in, there is not an overuse of out of office because the expectation as attorneys is I'm always available for my clients.
Right.
Like, oh, I can always be available. I can be available at night. I can be available in the morning. I can be available on the weekends. And if that's really what you want to do, oh, okay. But that's just not realistic for the life that, I have or Laura has, and the responsibilities and obligations that we have outside of this office. So using that tool sets a reasonable expectation. I don't say, I'm in a mediation, but I will get back to you in between all of my breaks that we have to take.
Absolutely not.
I say, I'm not going to be in the office for the balance of the afternoon. All of my emails will be responded to by tomorrow morning. And that's my reasonable expectation. That's my boundary. And then I now have a guidepost saying, okay, if anything came in during that time period, I have to respond to it by the morning.
And by the way, when I was younger, I did not have that mindset. I would have been like, oh my God, I have all these responding to emails during a closing, saying, I can't wait too long to get back to this person. Now I have a totally different mindset about it. If it's urgent, yes, I will deal with it when I need to deal with it. But otherwise,
emails aren't urgent, folks. They're not urgent.
It can wait. A lot of times, like if I'm working on a project or drafting motion papers or something where I really need to focus, I close my email. I flip my phone over so I can't see it. I turn it on silent so I don't get distracted by all the emails, because 99.9% of the time, unless it's like a time sensitive real estate issue, it's not urgent.
No,
it's just not urgent.
Yeah.
So our takeaway from today is really, don't put so much pressure on yourself to create balance. It's an impossibility. And if you are trying to achieve balance in your work and personal life, you're just going to be miserable, because it's not possible. So give yourself grace, stop putting so much pressure on yourself. And just, give yourself the grace to, sometimes you'll be more focused on work and sometimes you'll be more focused at home. It's going to change on a daily basis, and it is what it is. But, don't stress yourself out over it, because trying to achieve that is trying to achieve the impossible. So we hope these tips were helpful. We thank you for spending time with us, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.